Good morning. Today is Friday, July 31st, 2020. So I had a bit of an ordeal that, Baruch Hashem, thank God, worked out fine. On Wednesday, at about noon, I got a phone call that someone I had a very brief contact with this past Shabbos, that person tested positive for the COVID virus. So I immediately went to get tested, and I stayed in isolation until I got the result of the test, which was, thank God, negative. And I got that result late yesterday afternoon. That's the reason I did not attend Minyan over Tisha B'Av. And that's also the reason that I did the Zoom sessions on Wednesday night from my home, because I was in isolation. So on Wednesday, when I got the call, I was told to go to the Jewish General Hospital, and I cannot speak highly enough about every aspect of that experience. First of all, it's very well organized. It was quick. Every person, every security guard, every nurse, every technician, everyone was so nice and so helpful. They answered all of our questions. The truth is that I had been dreading this test. The idea of what has to be done for it is something that caused me quite a bit of anxiety, and it was fine. It was only mildly uncomfortable for 10 seconds, and it was much better and easier than I feared. It's really no big deal. But from that experience, I have two very important messages to share. And the first is, the person who tested positive, who was the reason that I went to get tested, that person went to get tested for almost no reason whatsoever. The symptom that person had was so slight. They had a slight sore muscle, which was really the result of lifting a heavy table. So it was no reason actually to be tested at all. This person actually overreacted. But it was the right thing. And now, because of this person's overreaction, she was found to be positive, and she was able to ensure that a number of people around her would be tested and could protect themselves. So my first message to every single one of you is, don't hesitate to be tested, even for the slightest reason. The test is no big deal, and it is much better to err on the side of caution and not take the risk of inadvertently harming someone else. Yes, it is true that even if you test negative, but simply by getting the test, it is disruptive, because you must isolate yourself from the time you get the test until you get the result. Usually that's within 24 hours. But it is well worth it to be overly cautious for your health and the health of those around you. And clearly, this is a halachic requirement. Even if it means not coming to Minyan on Tisha B'Av or any other consequence. I know firsthand of two people who were also connected to this situation that I was connected to. One person, and I'm changing the details slightly in order to make sure that I'm hiding the identity of these people. One person refused to be tested because they did not want to miss attending Minyan on Tisha B'Av. And that is a terrible and reckless decision. On the contrary, they should have been more careful to guard against giving it chas v'shalom to anybody else. And another person I know resisted getting tested because this person had so much that they had to do with deadlines, and they had planned appointments, and there were things that were necessary because of what's going on into their lives. And so I say to every single person, whatever you think is so important that you can't isolate for 24 hours, I promise you, you will feel much worse if it turns out that you are infected and that you infected others because you ignored getting the test because what you thought that you had to pay attention to was more important. It's not more important. Get tested. Of course, that means that it is essential and required to follow all health guidelines throughout this process. How you're supposed to act, who you have to inform, who you do not need to inform. That's my first message. Get tested, follow health guidelines. My second message comes from this. The reason this person, who was the cause of my getting tested, the reason this person overreacted and went for testing even though technically they did not have a symptom that called for it, but I'm glad that they did. The reason this person did this is because of a long discussion on Shabbos afternoon about numerous people in our area who were and are infected, teenagers playing soccer, a rabbi in this neighborhood that I did not know had been positive. And so with this discussion about more and more people in our area being infected, this person was nervous. And when even the slightest pain occurred to her, this person decided to get tested. My second message comes from very troubling information that I have learned since Wednesday. I wish I did not have to share this. It will sound a bit harsh, but I feel as a rabbi in this community that I am obligated to share this message as clearly and loudly and widely as possible. There are people in our neighborhood, in our community, who have not gone for testing when they should have. And they have not been honest and open to tell others when they knew that they were net positive, to tell others who could be affected by them or by their family members. This is, I'm sorry to say, going on in our neighborhood, in our community. This is a terrible sin. Of course, this is on top of some people in our area who are and who have been lax in taking precautions, in violating guidelines, looking for loopholes to be overly lenient, thinking that somehow because they were acting in order to engage in religious life, like prayer services, but when it's done without precautions, without people wearing masks, with too many people close distance, with loud singing, all of these, with serving food, all of these things, dangerous behaviors, this is not a way of serving God. This is a desecration of God's name. And of course, there are consequences, serious health consequences, not just for themselves, but for many others who are around them who do not realize how seriously they are violating these requirements. Because of these selfish and reckless people, COVID is spreading widely now in Hampstead. And it may not show up in the statistics because part of it is people are hiding their condition, and it is terribly wrong. It is urgently important for everyone to follow all health guidelines, not to look for leniencies or loopholes, to wear a mask over our face, mouth, and nose. Without covering our mouth and nose, it is useless. Maintaining at least 2 meters distance, hand washing, trying to keep everything outdoors as much as possible, and reducing indoor interactions as much as possible. Get tested even if you have the slightest reason to do so. And be open and honest with your condition. There is nothing immoral in being COVID positive. If you're following the guidelines, you can still pick it up from everywhere. The tests are not perfect. The precautions are not perfect. You can pick it up from everywhere. And there should be no stigma to a person who is COVID positive, who is following the precautions. Anyone can catch it. But we must condemn those who are breaking the rules. So my message to you, follow the health guidelines. Be overly cautious, because that is what Jewish law requires. We are at a critical time right now, right here in Montreal, in Hampstead, at this moment. How we act now will help determine what kind of high holidays will we have. Will we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur like we had Pesach, with no minyan, with no shul, with no gatherings, with just immediate family and homes? Or will we be able to at least have outdoor services with masks and other precautions, and maybe indoor services with great distancing and other precautions? That hinges on our behavior right now. What kind of school experience will our children and grandchildren have in just a few weeks? And that's a terribly important discussion for our children's well-being, for the economy, for how this proceeds. It could go either way right now. And it will depend on how we are acting right now. Get tested. Follow the rules. If not for you, then do it for me and everyone you love around you. My friends, have a great day. Stay safe. Have a wonderful Shabbos.